Hello and welcome to this Odoo presentation and software demonstration. Today, we're going to focus on three main topics. Inventory, which includes the overall warehouse setup and products catalog. Purchasing, which is all about the different ways to handle procurement and receiving goods.
And I'm also going to go over some of the different ways that Odoo handles reporting in inventory and purchasing, since that's the main focus of today.
Try to keep an eye out for these three major strengths of the Odoo platform. First and foremost, you're going to see different Odoo apps like sales, purchase, and inventory, but really they're all closely connected and they're all integrated. And what this means is that you're going to get really smooth workflows between the various employees across your company. We also think it's really user-friendly, and the day-to-day work tasks should be really quick and easy for all the employees. And finally, the Odoo platform is extremely customizable, meaning that you can handle the same process in different ways depending on what you need, but also that it's just really easy to make changes and completely adapt it to meet your needs. Okay, so for the first part of this demo, I'm going to introduce the Odoo inventory application and show you the basic dashboard where you set up your warehouse and you manage the different operations like shipping and receiving. I'm also going to dive into where you set up your different products from your product catalog. It's a really good starting point because everything we're going to cover today involves the products in some way. So I'm just going to go ahead and switch over to this Odoo demo database is what we're going to work through today. So it's a very basic Odoo database that I set up just for this demo. This particular database, it's really simple, but that's okay because we want to stay focused on just the core apps we care about today. So these different icons right here, they represent the apps that we have, and each app is meant to handle different key parts of the business. Like sales is for quotes and orders, invoicing is for collecting some money, and the purchase app is for procuring from your vendors and so forth. Pretty straightforward. Now, one of the best things about Odoo is not just the integration, but it's also the scalability that we have. So if you click on apps, you'll see that we have 78 major apps, many of which have not been installed, but if we want to, we could just quickly install it real quick. It takes a few seconds. And they're separated into different categories because they handle different parts of your overall business. And the main point is you can always add them and you'll never break the integration. It's really easy to do, really easy to scale. And I should also point out that in this database, I'm logged in as this user, Brett Demo Tester, and I have full access to all the apps and I can edit them, I can create and all that, but it's all controlled in settings. If you go to settings and you go to users, you'll see that we can actually set up an additional user if we want to. And when we do that, we can decide if we want to restrict their access in particular apps, completely change what they have the ability to interact with. So everybody logs in, they might see something different, they might have different ability to interact with the platform. Okay, but let's get into the main stuff we want to focus on today. The inventory app is where we're going to start. This is the inventory overview. These different boxes that you see represent the different kinds of inventory operations that my company handles. So you have receipts right here, and these are expected incoming shipments, and they usually come from purchase orders to our vendors. We also see internal transfers right here, in case I want to relocate some of my items from one internal location to another, like if I'm moving it from one storage room to another, and then deliveries. That lets us ship stuff out. And it's usually because of sales we've made where we need to now ship something out to a customer. As you can see, there are really quick indicators for how many shipments there are to consider in each one of these different operation types, as well as seeing as well as seeing how many of them are late or if there's any back orders. And they're clickable. So if I click on the late right here, it shows me this shipment, and then I can go ahead and click on it and get into it. So let's look at this delivery for 10 flex hoses going to this delivery address. It's Wilson's Handyman Service. It's pretty simple, but it tells us what we need to see. And in this case, we missed the deadline for when it was supposed to ship out, and so it's highlighted in red, and that's why this is late. If I go back a bit from a planning perspective, we have a few different ways to view this. And that's one of the strengths of Odoo. You always have different ways to view the same information. And I like the calendar view a lot because it's really easy to understand and it helps me schedule things. And if I want to, I can click and I can drag this to a different day for when we want to ship it instead. Really easy to interact with. And you can have that ability with all of these different operation types. But that's the basics of the inventory overview and your operations. We're going to be working with these a lot as we go along in this demo. Now, the next thing I want to focus on is our products catalog. It's really important because my whole business is focused around buying and selling products, and the way we set up the products, it's going to have a huge impact. So what we're seeing right here by default is the Kanban view, and this is a nice visual representation of what we have in our product catalog. Shows you a picture of it, it's got the price, how many do you have on hand, that kind of stuff. But I personally prefer the list view for a lot of things because the list view allows us to sort by the different column headers, and it's just a better way when you're dealing with a lot more data. That's my preference. You get to pick and choose what you want. I'm going to talk about filters real quick. So filters, it's really strong in Odoo. Basically, any bit of data related to here, you can filter down on. So for example, a very basic one is if I just type in real quick the word flex, it automatically narrows down to this product because it has flex in the name. And I can add more if I want to. But basically, any field of data you can filter on. So if I want to, I could say, show me anything where the cost is, I don't know, greater than $2. And it immediately narrows it down to just these two products instead of all three of them, because these have a cost that is greater than 2. And you can keep on adding those as much as you want. Same goes with grouping. Right now, I'm actually grouping by category because I find that useful. But you can group by all sorts of things. And when you do that, it creates those bundles. And you can bundle things down or drill down into stuff like that. Pretty handy stuff. And once you like a particular view, you might save it as a default view, and you might share it with other users if that's a view you're going to rely on a lot. But let's go into a particular product. All right, stainless steel fitting right here. Now, this is the product form view, and a lot of this information is really important for how your product is set up. I'm not going to talk about everything on here, but down below we have different tabs with basic information. And I'm going to talk about a few fields. The sales price, it might seem really simple at first. This is, your basic public price for what you sell, and that's what it would be with taxes. It might seem simple at first, but it can actually be more advanced if you want, because you can have price lists that do special pricing based off of how many are sold, or special pricing based off of the customer or the location that it is. So a lot more that you can do with the price. And even the product category. At first, it might seem like it's just there to help you stay organized, basic parts right here. But if you click on it, you'll see there's a lot you can set up here, like the inventory valuation method and exactly where this thing gets put away every time you receive it. So in general, a lot of this stuff, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes if you want to go down that path. So there's a field right here, internal reference, and this is actually like our item number or part number or SKU number. And it's really normal for our clients to want to change this. So I'm going to talk about real quick our customization tool that we have called Odoo Studio. It's a fantastic tool. Basically, all I have to do is click on it, assuming I have access, and it opens up Odoo Studio's interface and lets me go and hover and click on any field in here. And I can go ahead and change it to, let's say, part number instead. And I'll go ahead and close that. And it's a simple change, but it's very effective because now every product I have, that field is called part number. And that's great because you can rename whatever you want to match the terminology that you're used to. Similarly, you can use Odoo Studio to add new stuff. So if I want to, I can drag in a new text field, I can drag in drop-down selection fields, and these are fields that point to different things in the platform. All sorts of different options here. I'm not going to talk about it all right now, but the main point is that the system makes it really easy to completely adapt it to what you need. You'll notice we also have a barcode field right here, which is cool. So you can have a string of characters and use that to print out barcode labels. Let's see, I'm going to print out 12 labels. Cool. And it should make a sheet of labels, and you can print these out and stick them on boxes, things like that. And it's cool because basically you can do all of your shipping and all of your receiving with barcodes or your inventory updates, stuff like that. And it's free. It's included with the inventory app. As long as you have the inventory app, you'll have the barcode functionality for when you're ready. Now, I'm not going to talk about every single tab, but the purchase tab is really important. This is where you list out the vendors that you buy this thing from. In this case, pipe vendors, where we buy it from. They might have their own name for it, and they might have their own code for it. And then this is the price that you would typically pay for it to the vendor. Now, you can have as many different vendors as you want, so I could add some other vendor here, either on the fly or whatever. Or you might even choose to add the same vendor and just say that if we buy at least 10 of them, then we get a better price on it. So that's a common way to do price breaks. And I just did this manually, but all this stuff can be imported for you with what we call vendor price lists, and that can save a lot of time. I'm not going to talk about much more down below because it's pretty straightforward and intuitive, but as you can see that the operations that apply to this are we buy it and we receive it. And then over here, there's some logistic information for things like how much does it weigh, and that's important in case you ever want to print out shipping labels and it needs to calculate the shipping. But that down below is all kind of static information. But up along the top, we have smart buttons, and these show information that might change over time. So we see this is how many we have on hand. We have 3. And if I click on it, it'll show me exactly where we have those. So you might have some in one location, some in another location. And that's the on hand. Over here, we have the forecasted amount. And this is what we're expecting to have after we incorporate things like shipments that are coming in and shipments that are going out. And it should show you a timeline of exactly when you expect it to change from 0 to 3, for example, and when you're expecting to get more and bring it up to 13. So yeah, the forecasted view is really useful, and you'll see that in other places in the system too. Now, I'm not going to explain any other smart buttons yet, but just know that we're going to be revisiting these as we continue, and they're going to be changing. Okay, so that was the basic inventory dashboard. We saw where the operations live and the setup of the products in a very basic way.
Okay, so now let's get into some purchasing, which will allow us to look at some actual integrated workflows for day-to-day activities that you might do in your business. We're going to show you how to make a purchase order. I'm going to get into replenishment, so how to get more stock, how to resupply. Let's get back into that database. Now this time I'm going to get into the purchase app. And it has a very close relationship with inventory. But I'm going to go ahead and get into the purchase app. Here's the dashboard. It's pretty basic, pretty straightforward in a good way. But basically it'll show you some quick KPIs like what's the average order value of what you have here, and some menu items like a quick link to your vendors, as well as you'll also see products again, because you can access the same information from different modules and different apps across the platform. We have some different POs down here with different statuses. I'm going to go ahead and just manually make a new purchase order. That's probably the easiest way to see how this works. I'm going to start by adding a vendor right here. So let's go ahead and add the Hose Inc. vendor. That's one of our vendors. And I'm going to go ahead and add a product on here. Let's say I need to buy some flex hoses. My boss told me I need to buy some flex hoses. We need more. So I'm going to place an order for 20 flex hoses at this price. Here's the total. Here's the overall total. There may or may not be tax applied, whatever. And I'm just going to go ahead and send it by email. It's very easy. Okay, so here's the email pop-up, and it has text right here, and it shows the name of the PO, and it creates an attachment right here. That's because of this template. So it's using a specific template called send RFQ. If we open up that PDF, you'll see that the RFQ default does not have prices listed on it because we're actually asking for a quotation from the vendor. We want them to tell us what the price is. So we can do that if we want, but let's say in this case I'm pretty confident about what the price is, so I'm going to go ahead and switch to this template, a slightly different one. It actually does put the amount in there, and it even changes the attachment in real time. Now the attachment, the PDF, actually does have this. So as you can imagine, you have a lot of power here just from this email pop-up screen. If you want to, you can add more information, you can add a personalized message, whatever. I'm just going to go ahead and send it. And now that it's sent, it's moved into this status. I'm going to talk about this feature that we have called the chatter. It's a really important feature, and you're going to see it all over Odoo, but it's below this line basically, or if I'm zoomed out, then it adapts and it puts it on the side, which is kind of nice. But for the purpose of this demo, just so you can see it, I'm zoomed in very close. So it's below this line. The chatter serves multiple functions, and it is a universal feature that you'll see all over Odoo. So it's on sales orders, it's on invoices, it's on deliveries. It serves multiple purposes. For one thing, it's a history, so it says every single activity that's happened along the way. It says exactly when. If you hover over it, gets you a timestamp. It says who did what too, so all this has been done by me as a user. Things like any records of any emails are in here, as well as when the stage changed. So yeah, it's a history, it's an archive. And it also is allowed for external communication, so you can click send a message and maybe say something like, hey vendor, did you receive? And they'll get an email. Or you could use it to log internal notes for yourself, or you could use it to log a note to another employee. So you could say, hey, and then you use the @ sign, and you can choose a fellow user, like another employee at the company called Sally. Could you look at this? And this is a great way to actually collaborate across your organization, because Sally is going to get an email with a clickable link that takes her directly here. So if she clicks the link, suddenly she's looking at this RFQ document. She'll also get it up at the top in what we call the discuss. So basically any internal communication automatically is part of our internal discuss, which is kind of like our Slack. We use it for internal communication. And it's also used for scheduling activities. So if you want to, you can schedule a next follow-up, something like, follow up, check with vendor, whatever. And you can schedule it for a particular time, and you can even assign it to another person if you want to. And it'll show up at the top as an activity that needs to be done. It'll also show up over here. This is the discuss that I showed you before, but this is also where activities go. So you'll see any future activities, you can click on it and get you right there. So a lot of functionality comes from here. And I should say a lot of the day-to-day actual work and doing your tasks and getting things done comes in the form of interacting with the chatter for each record. Really, really, really useful tool. And you'll see it over and over again in Odoo. But in this case, let's say that the vendor calls us up or sends us a fax or whatever, or they email us a response acknowledgement saying they got it. The way that our email works is that because this first email has a catch-all built into it and encoded, any replies to that will actually show up in real time in the chatter here too, which is really nice. But let's say they've confirmed it, the price looks good, and you can go ahead and click the button that says, okay, it's acknowledged, it's an official purchase order. The moment I did that, it does a couple things. For one thing, it adds these columns that say we ordered 20, but we've received 0 so far. We have not gotten it in stock, and we also haven't created any bills for it. And that really feeds into accounting, so we probably won't talk about that today. But it makes this receipt document, so it creates a smart button that links to an incoming receipt shipment that is really part of inventory. If I want to, I can click on it and I can view it from while I'm in the purchase app, and you can see, incoming shipment, it's expected for this particular day, 5 days from now, because that's the normal wait time for this product. And I could interact with it from the purchase app if I want. But you got to keep in mind that these integrated workflows, they're designed so that if you want, you can split the work up across different departments and different teams. So even though I was in the purchasing app as a purchasing manager placing that, you have to imagine that you might have a warehouse team of people that are keeping an eye on this, and maybe somebody just got alerted that they now have a new incoming receipt to deal with. So they click on this link, and sure enough, down at the bottom of this list of receipts that we're waiting on, Hose Inc. shows up right there. You might also see it on a calendar view if you prefer it. It's kind of useful, what's showing up if you have too many on one day, whatever. But I'm going to go ahead and go into that shipment. And yeah, Flex Hose, 20 of them, because that's what I ordered. And it's expected a certain day. So let's say that 5 days goes by. In this case, I'm just going to manually type in the amount. I'm going to say, okay, we actually received 20 of these in stock. Cool. And we'll validate it. Okay, so it's done. We've received it. And the best way to verify is if I go into products, I go and I look at my Flex Hose, and sure enough, it went from 26 to 46. If I want to get into more detail, you can click on this and you'll see where it is. If you click on stock moves for it, you'll see, we had 20 that just came in at this point of time. And you can also see a list of any purchase orders for it. So 360 view on the product shows you all of those changes that just happened. And that's the basic purchasing process. Now, that's a very simple way to do it. So in that example, I manually made a purchase order for 20 of the Flex Hose because my boss told me to. But in some situations, you will probably want your purchasing to be driven by actual demand from, say, orders from your customers. So I'm going to show how that works. In Odoo, if I enter a sale order, so this is for our different clients, I'm going to say for a customer named Frank, I'm entering a new customer on the fly. Maybe I'll do create and edit and I'll enter their actual email, things like that, frank@customer.com, something like that. Let's say this guy just called me up on the phone. I get a lot of orders that way. And he says that he wants to buy 10 of my Flex Hoses. I'm going to go ahead and enter the order real quick. Flex Hose 10. Now this looks very similar to the way that purchasing is handled, but it is a sale order. It's a customer placing an order with us. As you can see, 10 is green right here in terms of availability. We have plenty on hand. And so if I do place this order for 10, my amount will go down to 36. But if, let's say he changes his mind and he says he wants to buy 50, it immediately shows up as red because we only have 46 in stock. And it says, okay, if you do that, you're going to have a problem. It's going to be red. I'm going to go ahead and proceed because I want that money and I want that order. I'll figure it out later. Let's go ahead and confirm that order. Okay, so I confirm the sale order. It automatically says over here we have a confirmed sale order. And just like it did with the purchase app, it's created a smart button with a shipment, except this one's not an incoming receipt. This one's an outgoing delivery. Okay, so a good way to handle replenishment is if we go into this menu that we have called replenishment. Okay, so the replenishment view is really valuable because it basically lists out anything that there's currently a demand for, but you don't have a plan on how to get it. So it says that we have 46 on hand, but after we fulfill our order, we're going to have -4. If you want more information, you can click on this and see specifically what's drawing upon the demand. It has all the information right there. But getting back to the replenishment view, it'll give you the option, do you want to just order it once? Or do you want to set up some automation, which we call reordering rules, so that there's always a minimum and you'll never run into this situation again. For now, I'm just going to manually order once. Okay, so it generated a new purchase order for us. I can click on that if I want, but just to get you familiar with where things go, I'm going to go to the Purchase app. And sure enough, it has just drafted a new purchase order for us to this vendor. This is the default vendor for this product. And it's automatically saying that I need to order 4 in order for me to fulfill that order. It's pretty helpful. This doesn't automatically go to the vendor. Somebody has to still manually decide if this is going to go out. And it gives you the ability to hit edit and maybe make some changes. So maybe even though minimum would be 4, maybe to play it safe, I'm going to decide to say, let's order 30, just to play it safe. And you can go ahead and send that out if you want to. We can do the whole email process again if I want, but I'm just going to skip that and confirm the order. And immediately says it's a purchase order, it creates a receipt for us, and then our warehouse team can go ahead and receive that. And that's replenishment for you. Okay, for this last section, I'm just going to show some of the basic ways that Odoo handles reporting across the inventory app and the purchase app. And then briefly, I'm just going to touch on some of the additional configurations that can be enabled to really expand the scope of what this can handle. Let's go ahead. And this time I actually want to switch over to a different database. This is a generic demo database. I like to use it for reporting because it has more sample data in it. But you'll notice reporting shows up in the menu for every app pretty much. If you click on reporting, one of the first ones you'll see is the warehouse analysis. So this is sort of a dashboard type view, and it shows you a consolidation of several different things. It shows you up at the top deliveries. That's what we're looking at by default. But you get to play around with filters and grouping by, just like we saw before. So right now what it's showing us is deliveries for the month of July by a week-by-week basis. There's been one that week, one that week. But you might decide that you'd rather look at it grouped by, say, product, apply that, and maybe we expand the date so that it's looking over time. So we saw 2 cabinets were shipped, and we see that 1 desk combination was shipped. You can play around with this and just view these things however you want for comparison. Down below, there's a bunch of KPIs that could be configured that show you things like how long the delay is on deliveries, or what's the value in your inventory at the moment. So that's kind of nice. But this is just a basic dashboard view, and these are customizable. You can move them around. You can change the kind of stuff that shows up in a consolidated dashboard view. More specific reporting, though, is generally a bit more useful. If I go into inventory reporting, if you drill into those, you can specifically see what location they're at, any lots or serial numbers that are being used, and the breakdown of the quantities per lot and serial number. So you can get a lot more granular detail from your inventory report from there. And if you want to look at it from a valuation perspective, this report right here shows you the cost as well per item that you have in your stock and the add up of that. These are just various ways to report on things in list view. A lot of times when you're looking for a report, list view is the best place to start. But we also allow for a pivot table view. And the pivot table view, I think a good place to show you that is actually in the Purchase app. So the Purchase app has its own specific reporting, and you might do purchase analysis. There's all sorts of ways you could look at it, graphically, pie chart, whatever. But in this case, I'm going to switch over to pivot view. And it's kind of like an expanded list view. Some people have familiarity with pivot view, some people don't. But it's basically you choose what shows up on this axis, and then you choose what shows up on this axis for comparison. I'm just going to do a basic one where I'm going to see my vendors listed out right here. I'm going to choose the measures, so these are the actual things that are being tracked in here. I'm going to say just the total. That's it. I just care about the totals of the amounts of the dollars. And then I'm going to list it by specific product down below. So then you've built out a pivot table view that says by vendor, these are the products that have been purchased. If you want to, you might filter down the date range and say, just only show me the ones for this quarter, for example. A lot of control over it, and that's pivot tables for you. And then another thing that's really great about Odoo reporting is that if you've built out a pivot table that you like and you save it as a favorite, you might decide that you want to do some interacting with it, and you can do that in spreadsheet mode. So Odoo has internal spreadsheets that you can set up where you basically feed it in real time with data coming from the platform. And it works a lot like a Google Sheet or Excel because you can start doing formulas. So in this case, you might decide, show me the average of this column right here. And it'll take the average. That's the most basic thing you can do, but you can basically bring in data from different parts of the app and start comparing them together. It's really useful, especially if you're used to working with spreadsheets and there's certain formulas and things that you really want to be able to keep. I should finally say that at any point, if you want to, you could decide to just download this as an Excel file and work with it externally. So that's just a very quick, brief view of the kinds of reporting that is allowed in Odoo. I want to jump back to our original database that we're using because I wanted to point out that a lot of what we were doing today was pretty basic. The products that we set up were pretty basic, pretty simple. There's a lot of things that I haven't enabled because I wanted to keep it simple. But if you go into configuration for any app, there's almost always a bunch of stuff you can enable. And inventory has a lot of things that we could add to it. Stuff that might be necessary for a particular business, like the ability to track units of measure, or the ability to put things in packages, or the ability to have variants with attributes and values, lots and serial numbers, expiration dates, so on and so forth. That's more of a teaser that there's so much more to uncover and view about Odoo. And the nice thing, like I mentioned earlier, is that it's scalable, so you can always start basic and start simple, and at any point, you might decide that you want to add more functionality. So to summarize everything, we talked a bit about inventory for products and the operation types. We talked about purchasing and replenishment and a little bit of reporting in there too. It's really just a teaser and just to show some of the basics of these integrated workflows between the apps, but there's a lot more to uncover. I hope this was helpful.